The jungle is not silent. It breathes. A wet, hot breath that clings to skin and fabric. The year is 1895. Somewhere in the unmapped interior of southern Africa, beneath a canopy so dense it turns noon into twilight, a man is digging. His hands are blistered, his shirt stained with sweat and earth. The only sounds are the thud of the pick, the gasp of his own labor, and the distant, shrieking call of a hornbill. He stops. The metal has struck something that isn't rock. He drops to his knees, clawing at the damp soil with his fingers. He uncovers a wooden slat, rotted but intact. His heart hammers against his ribs, a frantic drum syncopated against the steady drip from the leaves above. With a final heave, the wood gives way. The smell that erupts is not of treasure, but of time itself, a cold, mineral dankness that has been sealed for centuries. He reaches into the darkness. His fingers close, not around gold nuggets, but around something smooth, cold, and unnervingly familiar. He pulls it into the greenish light. It is a human skull, but not just any skull. This one has been crudely, purposefully deformed, the forehead elongated, the jaw massive, and set into its gaping eye sockets are two raw, uncut emeralds. They stare back at him, not with brilliance, but with a vacant, malevolent glee. This is not what he was promised. This is not Solomon's wealth. This is something older, something worse. Our story does not begin in that jungle pit, but in the gilded halls of Victorian London. The British Empire is at its zenith, a machine fueled by ambition and raw materials. In smoky gentlemen's clubs, men pore over ancient texts and fantastical maps. They are obsessed with a legend that has tormented explorers for centuries, the lost mines of Ophir, the source of the biblical King Solomon's staggering wealth. The Book of Kings tells us, and the king made silver to be in Jerusalem as stones. Solomon's temple was plated in gold, his chariots inlaid with ivory. This fortune, the Bible claims, came from a mysterious land called Ophir, reached in alliance with the Phoenician king Hiram. 4 generations, scholars and fortune hunters have placed Ophir everywhere from India to Peru. But in the late 19th century, a new theory takes hold, fueled by recent discoveries of ancient ruins in southern Africa. What if Ophir was not in the east, but here, in the dark heart of Africa? Enter our guide, Frederick Sealis, famed big game hunter and adventurer. A man who moves through the bush with the silence of a leopard, his beard flecked with grey, his eyes missing nothing. He is approached by a syndicate of financiers, men who wield checkbooks like cavalry sabres. They have a charter, a map based on a Portuguese explorer's fever dream diary, and a burning conviction. They want Sealis to lead an expedition. They want him to find the mines. Sealis is skeptical. He knows Africa. He knows its secrets are guarded by more than distance. But the promise is intoxicating. He assembles a team, a cynical geologist named Arthur Rocky Stanton, who believes in rock strata, not fairy tales, a Zulu interpreter and tracker called Samuel, whose grandfather spoke of the old ones who dug too deep, and 24 porters, their faces a mask of weary compliance. They are not seeking legend. They are seeking a paycheck. The journey inland from the coast is a descent into a primeval world. The air grows thick with the scent of loam and decay. The cheerful shouts of coastal birds are replaced by the whoop of hyenas at night. Samuel grows quiet, his eyes constantly scanning the tree line. He points out subtle signs, a circle of stones too regular to be natural, a grove of trees considered forbidden by local tribes, who speak of the guardians in hushed tones. One evening, as the campfire pops and casts long, dancing shadows, Samuel tells a story. It is not from the Bible. It is an oral tale, passed down through countless generations. He speaks of a great king from across the water, a man of immense wisdom but bottomless greed. He enslaved local tribes, forcing them to tunnel into the bones of the earth. But the earth fought back. It demanded tribute. The king, in his desperation, made offerings not of gold, but of life. The mines became tombs. The king sailed away, his ships heavy with cursed metal. The jungle, Samuel says, swallowing the ruins, does not like to give up its dead. Stanton scoffs, poking the fire. Superstition. They probably just ran out of ore. Silas says nothing. He watches the darkness beyond the firelight, his hand resting on the cool stock of his rifle. Days blur into weeks. Morale sags under the relentless heat and the leeches that find every gap in a boot. Then, they find the first real evidence. Not gold. A mine. An ancient, terrifyingly deep trench cut into a hillside, long since reclaimed by creepers. At its edge, Stanton finds a stone hammer and a pile of waste rock. His professional detachment cracks. This is primitive extraction. Bronze or Iron Age. This could be it. Excitement is a dangerous tonic in the jungle. It makes men careless. The next morning, one of the porters is found dead at the edge of camp. Not killed by an animal. His throat was cut. In his rigid hand, he clutches a small, carved fetish, a twisted human figure with gemstone eyes. It is not of local manufacture. Samuel's face turns ashen. He was a spy, he whispers to Silas. For the others. What others? Silas demands. The ones who have always been here. The ones who guard. They are not alone. The jungle, it seems, is watching. The porter's murder hangs over the camp like a poison mist. Work continues, but now every rustle in the undergrowth is a threat, every odd-shaped shadow a potential attacker. Silas posts double guards. He notices the remaining porters communicate in hushed, rapid tones, their eyes constantly darting towards the north, where the jungle grows even denser. They are terrified of something far more tangible than legends. Stanton, however, is electrified. The ancient mine shaft is his sole focus. He descends into the gloom on a rope, emerging hours later, his clothes coated in red dust, his eyes wide with a fever that has nothing to do with malaria. In his pouch, he doesn't carry gold. He carries ore samples. "It's here, Frederick," he hisses, his voice trembling. The quartz is shot through with visible gold. Not a rich vein by modern standards, but ancient and deep. They followed it. They followed it straight down. He spreads the rocks on a map. His finger traces a line from the trench, following the geology, towards a nearby river valley. The main lode would be there, where they could process the ore with water. That's where the real treasure will be. Not just a mine, Silas. A city, a processing center. The decision is made. They will move camp to the valley. As they pack, Samuel approaches Silas. The tracker's usual composure is gone. "Barber," he says, using a term of respect laced now with fear. The dead man's fetish. It is a warning. The ones who left it, they are not tribal. They are a Bathakarthi, sorcerers. But they use very real knives. They believe the gold is soaked in blood. To take it is to wake a sleeping curse. Silas, a man of empiricism, feels a cold knot in his stomach. He has seen the fetish. The craftsmanship was exquisite, the emerald eyes chillingly lifelike. It spoke of a culture, not just a superstition. Who are they, Samuel? Tell me plainly. They call themselves the children of the snake. Descendants, they claim, of the overseers left behind by the ancient king. They believe they are the rightful guardians. They have traded tiny bits of gold for generations to buy guns from the Portuguese, from the Arabs. They are waiting. Waiting for what? For someone to find the heart, so they can take it back and seal it forever. The new camp by the river is idyllic and oppressive. The water provides relief from the heat, but the valley walls feel like a closing fist. Days of frantic digging yield nothing but more alluvial gravel. Hope begins to curdle into frustration. The financier's letters, delivered by runners from the coast, grow increasingly impatient, laced with threats of withdrawn funding. Then, on the morning of the 7th day, a porter's shovel strikes a different kind of obstacle. Not stone, but worked timber. A massive, blackened log wall, part of a sluice system of unimaginable scale. The discovery ignites a frenzy. They uncover more, stone anvils for crushing, or terraces, the foundations of dwellings. They have found it. Not just a mine, a factory, and at the center of it all, a pit. Unlike the earlier trench, this one is perfectly square, its edges lined with fitted stone. It descends into absolute blackness. A cold draft emanates from it, carrying that same mineral dampness, but with a new, acrid note, smoke, ancient and embedded in the very rock. Stanton insists on being lowered first. As he disappears into the earth, the only sound is the creak of the rope and the frantic beating of Silas's own heart. The weight feels eternal. Finally, 3 tugs on the rope signal to haul him up. When he emerges, Stanton is transformed. His face is pale, his eyes wide with a mixture of triumph and terror. In his arms, he cradles a collection of objects, a few crude clay pots, a broken copper adze, and one thing that makes the entire expedition catch its breath, a small, lumpy ingot of gold, unmistakably ancient, its surface pitted but still holding the dull, arrogant glow of the king of metals. But Stanton is shaking. "It's a tomb down there," he whispers, so only Silas can hear. Bones, dozens of them, piled in a chamber off the main shaft. And Frederick, the walls. They're covered in paintings. Men with elongated heads, mining, and others sacrificing. That night, celebration and dread wage a silent war in the camp. The porters are given extra rations, but they do not sing. They huddle together, casting glances at the dark mouth of the square pit, which they have begun to call the Devil's Throat. Silas sits by his tent, cleaning his rifle, the ingot of gold heavy on the table beside him. It feels less like a treasure and more like evidence. He is studying a rough sketch Stanton made of the wall paintings when the first scream tears through the night. It doesn't come from the jungle perimeter. It comes from within the camp itself. Silas is on his feet, rifle in hand, in an instant. The scene he bursts upon is one of chaos and brutal efficiency. Dark figures, their bodies smeared with ash and white clay, move through the camp like ghosts. They are silent except for the wet sounds of their work. They use short, heavy spears and long, cruel knives. They are not here to plunder. They are here to exterminate. A porter falls next to Silas, a spear protruding from his chest. In the flickering light of the overturned lanterns, Silas gets his first clear look at an attacker. The man's head is deformed, the forehead artificially elongated, just like the skull in the first, fateful pit. It is a living echo of the ancient paintings. The children of the snake are not a myth. They are here, and they have been waiting for this moment for centuries. Silas raises his rifle and fires. The crack of the Martini Henry is shockingly loud in the confined chaos. The attacker drops. But for every one that falls, 2 more seem to emerge from the blackness beyond the firelight. This is not an attack. It is a ritual cleansing. Silas's world narrows to the tunnel of his rifle sights, the deafening roar of gunfire, and the phantom shapes moving in the hellish dance of flame and shadow. The expedition's modern weapons hold a lethal advantage, but the attackers have numbers, the cover of darkness, and a fanatical purpose. They do not cry out in pain or fear. Their silence is more terrifying than any war cry. Silas fights his way towards the center of camp, where he last saw Stanton. He finds the geologist backed against a supply crate, wielding a rock hammer with desperate, wild swings. A clay-smeared warrior lies at his feet, skull-crushed. Stanton's glasses are gone, his face a mask of sheer panic. The gold! He screams over the din, they want the gold. But Silas sees the truth. The attackers are ignoring the supplies, the modern tools. They are making a deliberate, ruthless line towards the square pit, the Devil's Throat. They are not here to steal the treasure. They are here to reclaim it, to bury it once more, and to bury the men who profaned it along with it. A hand grips Silas's shoulder. It is Samuel. Blood runs from a cut on his scalp, but his eyes are clear and urgent. This way, Barber. Now. It is lost. Silas hesitates, the Victorian imperative to stand his ground warring with the hunter's instinct for survival. He sees a porter being dragged, still alive, towards the black maw of the pit. The man's screams are abruptly cut off as he is thrown into the void. It is a sacrifice, a repetition of an ancient rite. "Stanton, with me." Silas bellows. He grabs the geologist by the arm, and with Samuel leading, they break for the jungle's edge. They are a fragment of the whole, a handful of survivors scrambling into the suffocating embrace of the trees. Behind them, the sounds of slaughter diminish, replaced by a new sound, a low, rhythmic chanting that seems to rise from the pit itself, a sound that is not of victory, but of closure. They run until their lungs burn, not stopping until the grey light of dawn filters through the canopy. The three of them are alone. Of the 24 porters and the other European assistants, there is no sign. The jungle has swallowed them. Silas slumps against a tree, the adrenaline ebbing, leaving a cold, sickening hollow in his gut. In his frantic escape, he had grabbed only one thing from his tent, the heavy, pitted gold ingot. It feels like a tumor in his pack. Weeks later, a ghost of a man stumbles into a trading post on the Limpopo River. Frederick Silas is gaunt, haunted, his clothes in tatters. Samuel is by his side, silent and watchful. Arthur Stanton is not with them. He had succumbed to a fever 2 days into their retreat, raving not of gold, but of the elongated skulls that stared at him from the walls of the pit. He died whispering about the price. Silas sends a tersely coded telegram to his financiers in London. Site located. Evidence secured. Expedition compromised. Total loss of personnel and equipment. Hostile native guardians extreme. Return advised. He includes no coordinates. He makes no promise of a return. Back in London, the syndicate is furious. They have lost a fortune, but they have Silas's report, his sketches, and most importantly, the ingot. They see a setback, not a defeat. They quietly begin planning a new, larger, and better-armed expedition. The gold, assayed, proves to be of exceptional purity. The legend is real. The financial pages buzz with rumor. The lost mines of Solomon are no longer a myth. They are a business proposition. But Silas wants no part of it. He retreats to his club, a brooding, changed figure. He drinks brandy and stares into the fire, jumping at sudden noises. When pressed by fellow explorers, he does not speak of adventure or treasure. He speaks of the smell of damp soil and old blood. He speaks of the silent, deformed men who moved like shadows. He places the fetish with the emerald eyes on the table before them. That, he says, his voice flat, is the true guardian of Offa. Not a legend, a people, and we are merely the latest fools to disturb their watch. The story, however, is too tantalizing to be contained. A journalist gets a hold of a sanitized version, and soon the newspapers are screaming about Silas's discovery of the biblical gold mines. The public's imagination is set ablaze. A new wave of fortune seekers, armed with the vague details, begins to descend upon southern Africa. They are met not with empty jungle, but with a wall of silence and hostility from local tribes, and from a newly assertive colonial authority. For in the aftermath, something else has shifted. The raid was not the end of the children of the snake. It was a declaration. Word of the defilement of the sacred site spreads through indigenous networks. A new, fierce resistance begins to coalesce, not just around the gold, but around the land itself. The mines become a symbol. The British South Africa Company, seeking to expand its territory, finds itself facing unexpectedly coordinated and spiritually ferocious opposition. Every advance is met with ambushes led by warriors who fight with a strange, fervent desperation. Whispers among colonial troops speak of enemies with misshapen heads seen leading raids in the dead of night. The conflict is no longer about archaeology or wealth. It has become a war for the soul of the land, a war between an empire that sees only resources and a people who see a covenant written in blood and bone. The fallout from the bloody night at the river valley ripples outwards, a stone thrown into the dark pond of history, its concentric circles distorting everything they touch. In London, the financiers, undeterred by Silas's grim account, form a new, more powerful consortium. They call it the Offer Syndicate. Their prospectus, printed on heavy creamstock, is a masterpiece of omission. It speaks of geological conformations, ancient artifacts of immense historical value, and vast mineral potential. It does not mention elongated skulls, ash-smeared guardians, or the screams from a sacrificial pit. They recruit a new leader, Colonel Sir James Blackwood, a decorated military engineer with a reputation for getting things done in difficult territories. He is a man of empire, all crisp linen and unshakable certainty, who views Silas's experience as the failure of a hunter, not a soldier. Silas, hearing of the new expedition, makes one final attempt. He meets Blackwood at the Travelers' Club. The air is thick with cigar smoke and arrogance. "You are walking into a temple, Colonel, not a mine," Silas says, his voice low. "They are not protecting gold. They are protecting a gate." Blackwood sips his port, unimpressed. "Gates are made to be opened, Silas. With dynamite if necessary. My men have Maxim guns. We are not frightened by native mumbo-jumbo." "You should be," Silas replies, but the conversation is already over. He leaves the ingot on the table between them. A souvenir. "May it bring you better fortune than it brought me." The Second Offer Expedition of 1897 is a military campaign disguised as exploration. 100 well-armed men, armed with the latest repeating rifles and 2 belt-fed Maxim guns, weapons that could scythe down a field of wheat in minutes. They have precise coordinates, refined from Stanton's lost notes. They move with brutal efficiency, cutting a swath through the jungle. They encounter resistance almost immediately. Ambushes from the trees, poisoned waterholes, traps of sharpened stakes smeared with excrement. The attacks are harrying, designed to delay and demoralize. Blackwood is annoyed, not alarmed. His Maxims chew through the foliage and anyone hidden within it. He sees this as proof of the treasure's value. "Only something priceless is defended this fiercely," he writes in his journal. They reach the river valley. The camp from 2 years prior is gone, utterly reclaimed. Only the square stone mouth of the Devil's Throat remains, a deliberate scar on the land. Blackwood sets up a fortified perimeter, searchlights powered by steam generators cutting through the perpetual twilight. He is methodical. He has the pit cleared, shored up with timber, and a winch installed. He ignores the ancient sluices and the grinding stones. His goal is singular: follow the main gold vein straight down. Deep underground, his engineers find exactly what they seek: a wide chamber supported by ancient, petrified timber. And in it, not just ore, but the motherlode, a stack of raw, hammered gold ingots, perhaps 100 of them, left in a neat, terrifying pile as if an offering. The news sends an electric current of greed through the camp. The men are ordered to haul the treasure up immediately. But in that same chamber, the engineers also find the walls. They are covered, floor to ceiling, not in paintings, but in a deep, intricate carving, a bas-relief of stunning, horrific artistry. It depicts a procession, slaves hauling baskets of rock, overseers with whips and elongated heads, furnaces belching smoke, and at the center, a regal figure on a throne, Solomon, or a king like him, receiving tribute. The final panel shows the same king, his ships laden, sailing away. And behind him, the mines are being sealed, with the workers still inside. The inscription, in a Proto-Phoenician script that no one can read, is carved around the scene like a serpent eating its own tail. Blackwood, when he is lowered down to see it, feels a chill that the damp air cannot explain. He orders the men to focus on the gold. "Record the carvings with photographs," he barks. "The academics can have their drawings later. The syndicate wants the weight." The ingots are hauled to the surface, one by one. They gleam dully in the electric lights, a dragon's hoard piled in the mud. As the last ingot is winched up, a low rumble echoes through the chamber, a grinding of stone on stone that sends dust cascading from a ceiling. The ancient timber supports, disturbed by the vibration and the change in air pressure after millennia of stasis, begin to groan. The engineers scramble for the lift. The chamber, having given up its treasure, is preparing to become a tomb once more. On the surface, the jungle has gone preternaturally quiet. The usual chorus of insects and birds has ceased. The porters, all hired from distant tribes who have no law of this place, are visibly trembling. Samuel, who has been following the expedition at a distance, hidden, watches from a ridge. He knows the silence. It is the breath held before the strike. It begins not with a war cry, but with a signal fire on a distant hilltop. Then another, and another, a ring of light igniting around the valley. The chanting starts again, but this time it is not coming from the pit. It is coming from everywhere, echoing off the valley walls, a harmonic, multidirectional dirge that seems to emanate from the very trees. Blackwood's men, battle-hardened as they are, feel their discipline crack. This is not warfare as they understand it. Then the children of the snake attack. But they do not charge the wire and the Maxims. They appear within the perimeter, rising from cleverly disguised pits and tunnels that connect to the ancient mining works. They emerge from the earth itself, among the piles of gold. The fight is intimate, horrific, chaotic. The Maxim guns are useless at point-blank range. The electric lights are smashed, plunging the camp into a madness of muzzle flashes and shadows. Blackwood, standing guard over the ingots, is confronted not by a warrior, but by a figure who seems to be their priest or king. An old man, his elongated skull a stark silhouette against the firelight, his body adorned with gold beads and emeralds. He holds no weapon. He points a bony finger at the pile of ingots, then at Blackwood, and finally, at the gaping mouth of the devil's throat. The meaning is unmistakable. Return what you have taken, or join it. Blackwood raises his revolver and fires. The old man falls. As he does, a unified scream of pure rage rises from the attackers, a sound that seems to shake the stars themselves. The fighting redoubles, becoming a slaughter on both sides. In the confusion, the steam winch near the pit, struck by a stray bullet or perhaps by something else, explodes. The boiler ruptures with a deafening roar, showering the area in scalding metal and coals. The timbers around the pit head catch fire. The ancient, resinous wood, dried over centuries, ignites like a bomb. A pillar of flame erupts from the devil's throat, turning night into a garish, flickering day. The scene is one from a medieval vision of hell, men fighting and dying amid piles of cursed gold, silhouetted against a fiery chasm that once was a mine. The jungle itself seems to recoil. Blackwood, wounded, his uniform on fire, staggers back from the heat. He makes a decision. In a moment of either madness or profound understanding, he begins kicking the ingots, one by one, back into the inferno. They tumble, glowing, into the depths. His men stare, aghast, as their commander voluntarily destroys the fortune they have all bled for. As the last ingot disappears into the fire, a great cracking sound echoes from below, followed by a deep, subterranean collapse. The earth shudders. The stone rim of the pit crumbles inward. The devil's throat seals itself with a final, thunderous sigh, swallowing the fire, the gold, and the bodies of the fallen. The silence that returns is absolute. Dawn reveals a charnel house. The smouldering, collapsed moor of the pit is now a grave mound. Of the 100 men, less than 20 survive, most wounded, all shell-shocked. Colonel Blackwood is among them, his face and hands badly burned, his eyes vacant. The gold is gone. The Maxim guns are silent, twisted wrecks. The attackers have vanished, leaving behind only their own dead, whose clay-smeared forms already seem to be melting back into the earth. The survivors' retreat is a funeral march. They are harried by disease and a growing sense of a land that actively rejects them. They leave behind no markers, no claims. They bring back only stories, fragmented, incredible, horrifying stories that, in the sober light of colonial officers, sound like the ravings of men driven mad by heat and defeat. The official report blames a catastrophic boiler explosion and hostile native action of unusual coordination. The words King Solomon and lost mines are conspicuously absent. The offer syndicate dissolves in scandal and ruin, its backers silent, their dreams of wealth turn to ashes. But the story, like a persistent ghost, refuses to die. It fragments, mutates, and seeps into the world. Frederick Selous, hearing the full account from a broken corporal in a Cape Town hospital, simply nods. He returns to Africa, but not as a treasure hunter. He becomes a conservationist, a man who finds more value in living ivory than in dead gold. He is often seen staring into the middle distance, as if listening for a chant on the wind. He never writes his memoirs of the event. When he dies years later in the Great War, shot by a German sniper in East Africa, his last words, according to his men, were, "Mind the stones. They are watching." The debate begins almost immediately, fueled by the few artifacts that survived. Selous's fetish, Blackwood's photographs of the chamber carvings, miraculously saved by a sergeant, and the conflicting, traumatized testimonies. The academic faction, led by museum archaeologists, dismisses the supernatural embellishments. They point to the carvings and artifacts as clear evidence of a sophisticated, pre-colonial goldworking culture in southern Africa, possibly linked to the great kingdom of Mapungubwe. The elongated skulls, a ritual deformation practice known in several ancient cultures. The ferocious guardians, a resilient tribal priesthood protecting a sacred ancestral site from desecration. The curse is simply the predictable outcome of colonial greed meeting determined indigenous resistance. The story, they argue, is a stark lesson in archaeology and ethics, not the supernatural. The legend keepers, a mix of mystics, alternative historians, and treasure hunters, hear a different truth. To them, the mines were indeed Solomon's, and the guardians were the literal descendants of his overseers, a lost tribe preserving an ancient, bloody covenant. The curse was real, a spiritual poison attached to the gold itself. They cite the bizarre failures, the madness, the sudden collapses. They whisper that the children of the snake still exist, deeper in the wilderness, guarding other sites, waiting. For them, the story is a warning that some doors, once opened, cannot be closed. Then there is the geological truth. Modern surveys have confirmed immense, untapped mineral wealth in the region. Gold, copper, tin. The ancient miners were not chasing legend. They were following a real and rich geological belt. The lost mines were simply the most prolific workings along this belt, lost to history after their exploiters abandoned them. The conflict was an inevitable clash between industrial-scale extraction and a culture that saw the earth as a living ancestor. The greed was timeless. The technology was the only thing that had changed. But what of the enduring mystery? The specific location of the river valley has never been conclusively identified from the records. The area, now within the borders of modern nations, remains remote and politically sensitive. Subsequent, smaller expeditions, funded by clandestine outfits or deluded individuals, have vanished or returned empty-handed, speaking of an unnerving sense of being watched, of equipment failures, of local guides who absolutely refuse to go beyond certain invisible boundaries. The most unsettling questions are the human ones. Who were the children of the snake? A cult? A family lineage? A society that genetically and culturally preserved itself for 3,000 years to keep a promise? What did the final, unreadable inscription around the chamber wall actually say? A warning? A prophecy? A ledger of the dead? And the gold? Is it still there, buried under hundreds of feet of collapsed rock and baked soil, waiting for a new technology to unlock it? Or was Blackwood's final act of surrender the only correct ending? The treasure returned, the debt paid, the gate sealed? The jungle has grown back over the scar. The river still flows. The hornbill still calls. The land holds its secret, not as a passive keeper, but as an active participant. The conflict was never truly about the gold. It was about a story, one of wisdom corrupted by greed, of a covenant written in fire and blood, of the price of disturbing deep, old things. The legacy of Solomon's lost mines is not a map to treasure. It is a mirror. It reflects our own obsessions, our willingness to rationalize sacrilege as progress, and our haunting fear that the past is not dead, but lying in wait, its guardians patient, its terms non-negotiable. Every mining conglomerate that eyes a sacred indigenous land, every collector who craves a forbidden artifact, reenacts the first steps into that green, breathing darkness. So the story ends where it began, in the quiet of the deep bush. Not with a bang, but with a watchful silence. The trees stand sentinel. The earth remembers what was buried. And if you listen closely, in the space between the rustling leaves, you might just hear it, the faint, echoing chant of those who never left, and the heavier, colder sound of gold settling in its permanent, restless tomb.